Our next guest has been a voiceover artist, a Shakespearean actor, a songwriter, and a musician, and she now thrives in a business development role for an asset manager. Hear how her pivot was the outcome of a life-changing accident, and how attitude, belief, and determination is all we really need. In this series, as a special treat, we are featuring the music of one of our guests in the series, Julia Kwamya. You can find the link to Julia's Spotify album in the show notes. I'm Aoife Devitt, and welcome to the 50 Faces podcast, a podcast committed to revealing the richness and diversity of the world of investment by focusing on its people and their stories. I'm joined today by Julia Kwamya, who's an associate at Tikehau Capital based in New York City. She is trained as an actor, musician, and voiceover artist and has released her first album, Feel Good About Feeling Bad. We are featuring songs from this album on this entire Series 5 of 2023. She's been creator in residence at Kickstarter, as well as a casting assistant, among other roles in the entertainment industry. She studied economics at Pepperdine University. Welcome, Julia. Thanks for joining me today.
Thank you, Ethan.
Well, let's start with your background and career journey. Where did you grow up? We know what you studied, but how did you come to enter the world of investing?
Well, I should mention that I was born to a Ghanaian woman and a Ugandan father. You know, as these countries are on the opposite ends of the spectrum of the continent, Africa, how do these people meet? Well, they met at a party on New Year's Eve in DC. So I was born in Rockville, Maryland. For about 3 years, we lived there and moved to Sweden when my dad started working for a tech company called S3 Technologies. And then soon after that, our lives sort of bounced around a bit, and we moved to the desert of California, Apple Valley, to Connecticut for a year, New York, upstate, Fishkill, New York. That's where I went to high school. And finally, I decided to go back to California, but this time La La Land, and went to university at Pepperdine University.
Well, California certainly had its impact on you in other areas as well with the entertainment. How did that start? How did your love of singing, being on the stage, acting, where did that start?
I think all the time, like growing up, my mother would read us stories and we'd watch BBC, PBS, and watch whatever Shakespeare was happening. And she immersed us in that world. Singing, she was always singing around the house. And, you know, I think going to different church or family members, you know, people are always singing around us, and you just start to do it. And then I just had more of a deeper interest in music. I asked my dad for a keyboard when I think I was about maybe 6, 7, something like this. And he bought me this MIDI keyboard called the Miracle that basically was programmed to teach you theme songs from hit TV shows at the time. So for whatever reason, I knew the theme song for MASH, you know, all these like old 70s TV shows that don't exist anymore. That sparked my brain, and I eventually started taking classical piano lessons and continued from there. Acting, I was always creating stories with my siblings. There's 4 of us, and so I'd be the writer or director, and then also play the starring role. And then my sisters and my brother would also contribute, and then we'd put it up for my parents in whatever little salon or dining room we had at the time. So the bug still is with me.
Well, of course, that's your prerogative as the director to star yourself, or to cast yourself in the starring role. And it sounds very much like the childhood of Steven Spielberg or some of the other greats who started on a shoestring. But yet you still studied economics. So you had one foot planted in this was a different world. How did that decision get made?
Oh my goodness. I mean, I still had African parents, you know, like there's still a reality I had to live in. And I think that's really, I knew that if I wanted to continue with the creative things, that would probably be a do that on your own time situation. And at the same time, economics was cool for me because I liked the weird science of it all, the weird maths of it all. And I'm always trying to ask why things are happening. So economics at that time, like, really exposed me to potential answers to these kind of questions. And I think also I was always watching my dad read different books on entrepreneurship, and you know, he's worked in the corporate world for 37 years, so I could see that there was an element of him that was always trying to break out and do his own thing. And it kind of instilled the break out and do your own thing in me, probably a bit too soon, but maybe it's never too soon. He gave me a Robert Kiyosaki book, The Rich Dad, Poor Dad thing. And I started reading that, and I've just been determined since then, probably since I was like 13, to just have my own business, start my own thing, and really build.
And let's talk about that journey just a little, the pre-TKO journey through the entertainment industry. Were there any ups and downs there? And how did it form you?
Firstly, you have to understand, like when I graduated school, it was 2008. Finance industry was rocky. So all my friends and I that thought we were sort of shoo-ins for whatever financial twinge job we were going to get, those dreams weren't happening exactly. So it actually it opened up this portal of time for me to focus and study and immerse myself in the creative world. So I used that time to meet everyone I could in New York and take acting lessons and music. At that time, I wasn't particularly training, but I was hanging out with enough musicians that I just started to write my own thing and trialed with a band, and then they all got married and had kids. And
then you did have an accident that caused you to reset and rethink, I suppose, your objectives and maybe your course of your career. Can you talk a bit about that and what the reset looked like?
Yeah, I mean, so about 4 years ago, I was in this taxi. I'll call it an incident versus an accident, but I was in this incident that pretty much left the right side of my body paralyzed. And it's one of these situations where you think to yourself, oh, Jesus, how am I going to get out of this? Will I move again? Will I work again? Will I even be able to go outside? Like very simple things. Will I move my arm again? Right. And I think I started to, once you get over the angst, depression, anxiety, and all the other stuff, I started to really appreciate all the great things around me that I really, really overlooked and didn't appreciate before, because I was sort of in my own narrow world of like, okay, you're gonna make it as whatever you're trying to make it as today. And I couldn't really slow down and take the time for myself, firstly, and even the people around me. So I think that, in the 4 years that I've healed almost 100% successfully from that, I really do listen a bit differently, a little bit more. I pay attention to my surroundings. I talk to my flowers, like I really am grateful for the sun, because there are moments where you're sitting in a hospital bed and you don't feel the light of sun. Even on a gray day, you can still feel the sun through the clouds. And I wasn't able to do that for a period of time. So I have a deep appreciation for my life in particular, and for the lives and people around me and the world. I do love life in this way that I have every intention of living it, particularly the way that I want to.
It's so interesting because you're not the first person on this podcast who has come on and spoken about the odd benefit of maybe spending a lot of time in a hospital bed, whether it's recovery from an illness, an accident like that. It has often caused a reset, caused a pause, caused a contemplation. I like to share those stories with others who are maybe going through it, because, I mean, certainly these are devastating blows, but they do build resilience and give us an opportunity that many people don't have to actually take the time and appreciate the small things. So thank you for sharing that moment, I suppose, or moments in your life and the positive that can come from it.
As an aside, I think you use the word resilience, and I think that word has been the underlying thematic of this whole thing. I think I've always been, sort of a stick to it kind of person, resilient in ways, but to the degree that I've had to really not stare death down, that's a bit morbid, but it is what it is, and really say to myself, no, we're not doing this today. Or, oh, my arm's not moving today. Well, guess what? We're going to move tomorrow. And almost like Uma Thurman in Kill Bill, where she's looking at her big toe and saying, wiggle my big toe. I mean, that's kind of what it is. You have to train your mind. Anything anyone says will literally break you down and you'll accomplish nothing.
It's amazing to hear you say that. I'd love to now move to where life took you after that, Tikehau and into the investment world.
So you can imagine a woman with a not moving arm isn't exactly being offered like many jobs. And I was still really, I mean, I'll be honest with you. There was a big part of me that was like, okay, I've survived this. So now I really have to be an actor. I really have to be a musician, like almost because I was still in this almost too anxious because, there's a part of my brain that was still kind of thinking, oh man, what if I don't have another day left? I've calmed down a bit now, but I think I was ready to do anything for work just because I wanted to get back with people, just to take care of myself again. I'd rather take care of myself than, my parents do it for me. So I really was like, okay, fine. You've studied economics, like, about the world. Let's apply for entry-level jobs because I haven't done it for the last 10 years. There are a couple of companies that had me in the running for their temp assistant, whatever. And I decided to go with TKO over all the rest. I think there's something about, I mean, I'm attracted to them for this very simple reason. Tikehau is a listed global alternative asset manager managing 41.1 billion euros. So there's that. And it was started about 20 years ago. Actually, next year is the 20th anniversary. So it was started 20 years ago by Antoine Flammarion and Mathieu Chabran, who used to work at Merrill Lynch. And, over these almost 20 years, they've created a solid platform across 4 asset classes: private debt, real assets, private equity, and capital market strategies.
We, of course, met at an industry event, and you're out meeting clients on the road, like many in your role. And what are you hearing from clients, and what are you focusing on at TKO in terms of a product suite?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'll probably merge a few things. I mean, I know climate ESG has been at the forefront, and I think it's working on that effort since about 2018. And I think as far as what I'm focused on, it's working with our decarbonization fund and our private debt secondaries team, which I'm sure you're aware, like everyone's all about secondaries these days. So it's cool for me to step in at this particular moment where some of the things that we're working on they're topical. Yeah, I feel very fortunate that I get to hang around these people all day and learn from them and see what it's all about.
And one question I always love to ask when someone has come from an artistic background is, what skills are you bringing from your performing, your voiceover work, your acting into the world of investing?
There are some moments where I'm like, this is the best acting job I've ever gotten. I mean, I feel like there's an element of memorization. So the countless hours I've spent memorizing Shakespeare haven't gone in vain, because you have to be diligent and methodical. And especially now that I'm back to taking my classical piano lessons, I have really, really taken to heart the lessons from Itzhak Perlman, who has an episode on Masterclass, and it's brilliant. I think everyone, I don't care what field or industry you're in, like just should watch it. There's one segment where he speaks about learning a song, no matter the song, measure by measure. It's just 4 counts or 3, depending on whatever time you're in. And it simplifies it. You think, oh, well, that's how am I ever going to get to the end of the song? But by the time you learn that first measure and you have it in your bones, you have it in your nerves, you have it in your muscles, then you can learn the second one. And then you start to realize or read the repetition in the song. And so then you know how to play those parts. So then you have the 2 sections down, but now you can go between sections and learn those measures so that you can learn how to like bridge the song together. I'm still learning a lot about how to live life through music and acting. There's a permission artists give themselves, and I'm really attempting to do more of that. And I think I bring it to this business development role because I know there's an element of this where people are sort of nervous to talk to people, or they're not, but I think at the end of the day, we're all talking to people. And again, I'm interested in listening to others and hearing about how we associate. I think that's what humans can offer each other. And I'm attempting to do a better job of that myself. So.
Well, there aren't many adults I come across who are going back to their classical piano lessons. I'm curious as to what's driving that particular urge.
I'll tell you, I mentioned earlier that we moved around a lot, and that impacted the friends I had or the classes I was able to stay in, and, the schools, I think I at one point went to 3 different middle schools. And I think I stopped playing maybe when I was around 12 or 13 because I was fed up, I was just tired of like all the change all the time, just so much change, constant change. And I think I'm inspired now because when anyone loses a certain capability that seems intrinsic, whether it's mobility or eyesight or whatever, any of your senses, it's odd. It's an odd feeling, to say the least. The one thing I did not want to lose was that connection that I've always had with the piano. And I asked my dad to bring a keyboard to the hospital, and I said, every day I'm at least going to touch keys just to make sure my fingers remember what the keyboard feels like, what a piano feels like. And I've been almost on this insane, I want to play it to the best of my ability. I don't know when that will be. I might be like 95. Should I make it that age? And I don't care. I'm just going to continue to play. And I think I decided to take lessons about 6 months ago with the wonderful woman, Lydia, Tribeca Piano Academy. And I said to myself, I'm going to play the song that I stopped playing when I was 12, which is, it's Minuet in G by Bach, and from the Clavier Suite, not Anna Magdalena. But I decided to learn it, and she really helped break bad habits that I had. And at the same time, this training of how to actually play the piano properly was helping me strengthen my arm, which has been, weakened. I've been growing bicep muscles and things like that. And so mentally, I'm like connecting all the dots of things that I love, and so I'm going to do it forever, So finally, we're done. It's 6 months, and we have to play a recital. I wasn't sure. I was like, am I going to make it? How am I going to get through this? Am I going to get too nervous? And we were playing at Steinway Hall, mind you. So, it's no small thing, but it was the best experience ever. It was the most cathartic experience ever, where I really let go of like years of old baggage about playing the piano. And at the same time, learned a different lesson that if I was actually going to play the piano in front of the 50, 60 people that were there, I needed to know how to breathe, firstly. And secondly, if I was going to let my nerves and all that anxiety get to me, then I'd never play the song. So it's really taking lessons again has helped me to really center myself and calm my body and be more focused on whatever the task is at hand.
It's a good advertisement for that tactic. So thank you. We're going to take a short break to hear from the sponsor of this series, With Intelligence. I sat down with Kip McDaniel, President Americas of With Intelligence, to ask him what the mission of With Intelligence was.
But now with Intelligence, we are not in the advertising business. We're not really in the media business. Our goal is to arm asset managers and asset allocators with the data, with the intelligence, and with the access they need to do their jobs on an everyday basis. We like to think of ourselves as an extension of staff for both allocators and managers in different ways so that they can do business together. They can meet their peers in a more efficient way through With Intelligence.
And now back to the show. I'd love to talk now about diversity. You've worked, I think it's interesting. I'd love to get your perspective. You've been in the entertainment industry, which probably has its own issues. You've now been in finance. I'd love to hear your impressions of diversity in finance and compare it maybe to the entertainment industry as well.
They're working on it. You hear lots of people putting their articles up and using the word sort of everywhere, saying that they're promoting it for whatever reason they're promoting it. I seldom see anyone that looks like me at conferences. Sometimes I was speaking to Chris Finley from Lenox Park Inc. and their company outside of investing sort of takes measurements, different diversity measurements for different companies if they so choose. And the one thing he mentioned to me was that Black women are the least visible in this finance industry. And that seems to be kind of prevalent across industries, maybe less so in acting these days because there's been such a push in Hollywood to hire diverse actresses, pay the same wages and all that stuff. But I mean, there's still an issue because there's also that you can hire people, but what are you hiring them for? And I think it's probably similar I'm no expert on the numbers on all this stuff, but it's probably similar in this industry where you see probably more juniors, more executive assistants, more sort of back office roles, but seldom see people at the top. And when you do, you're obsessed. Like I had the luxury of meeting Angela Miller-May at the conference that we were at, in Chicago, and she was lovely. She was running the lunch time of her day, and we've been in touch since. And I love seeing that because it gives me the hope, the ability to imagine that, okay, maybe I can sit up there too. I mean, why not? I mean, that's why when people watch television, they imagine themselves acting in the same show. So it should be similar when you're, no matter the industry you're in. I also think another idea that I have, or, we can complain about diversity all the time, but what are we doing to really promote it to, people when they're really young? I think there's an element of finance where if you're exposed to your finance bro dad or your finance bro uncle or your finance bro cousin, or it's in the family, or it's in the neighborhood. I mean, good God, go to Westchester. But if you're exposed to it in this way, naturally you're going to think this is something that maybe you should do. And for those who are not exposed to it, how do we build programs for them to get exposure and for them to start seeing it as a normal choice for them? Because it's still a choice. You have to make the decision to do it. So how does it become something that's in their lexicon?
So well said. And Angela Miller-May, of course, was the whole inspiration behind this podcast. You may not have known that, but she was guest number 3 and was the reason I wanted to tell her story and others. So thank you for the shout out to Angela. Let's go back now to some personal reflections. So you mentioned your parents, you mentioned some of the teachers perhaps you worked with. Any key people who influenced you looking back now in your career and life so far?
I have to say, it really has been my acting teacher, Tony Greco. I mean, he's one of these. So firstly, Tony is a method acting teacher who studied with Lee Strasberg back in the day. And, when I started his class, I knew nothing. I just came from studying economics. So my knowledge of plays was very limited. First, he encourages you to take the class and take it methodically so that you can learn all the lessons. Then he encourages you to read, and he encourages you to ask questions, and he encourages you to collaborate with your colleagues and don't let fear get the best of you, and get up, put a scene up, regardless whether you think you have the answer or you know what you're doing or you have the lines. I mean, learn the lines. I think I've been sitting at Tikehau for about 2 years, and there are some lessons that maybe in class I didn't understand. I didn't get, whether it was about collaboration or about diligence, timeliness. I remember there was one session where I was working in a restaurant and was notoriously tired and would come into class late all the time. Like just me, and it would be like 3 minutes late, or just late enough that it wasn't late, or I could make an excuse that it wasn't late. And one day he pulled me aside and he said, he's like, Julia, what if this was Broadway and you were doing a show at 10 a.m. and you're doing a show at 7 p.m.? Would you be late for that? And the quick answer is like, no, never. I would never. But he was like, yeah, you have to treat the places that you're going with the same level of respect. And class is one of them, because it did reflect what a week of Broadway looks like, 2 shows a day for about 3 hours. And I learned that I needed to respect that, because if you're late to a show on Broadway, guess who's happy? The understudy. They're ready to take your place. Someone's always ready to take your place. And I think that sort of work ethic has really helped me. I think there's also an element of asking questions for sure. And that's helped me, especially in my career now. And also creativity. Duh. I mean, that's the whole thing. Like, how are you going to put the story together? Because it can't just be saying the lines. It's not linear in that way. Like, what elements of some moments of your life, like what moments of, how are you going to not inspire yourself, but what are you going to use? What elements are you going to use from yourself to really enliven the play? I think that enlivening things like that. I'm kind of obsessed with this now, and I don't know how, I can bring that to my job as a business development person, but any way I can, I do.
That's so interesting. First of all, I love your description of your acting coach. It reminds me of Michael Douglas in the Kaminsky Method, which was such a fantastic series. And I remember going to a play one time and just not really being that impressed. I couldn't put my finger on why. And there was a man in the audience who was an acting coach and director. And I said to him, he said, what do you think? I said, I'm not sure. It's not captivating me. And he said, it's because the actors are not inhabiting the roles. And I thought that was exactly what was wrong with that particular play. And he identified it right away. I couldn't articulate it, but I do think that inhabiting of roles, maybe that, really getting into the playing the part is maybe what we need to do more, because it's ultimately bringing our whole selves into what we do.
Yeah. Yes. Well, maybe it was Tony you met.
And who knows? It was in London. But also, I do think that what you're sort of giving a sense of is the discipline and just the sheer, I suppose, the harshness sometimes of the entertainment industry. It's hard. And I don't think we always give transplants from that industry perhaps the credit for what they've had to go through, the grueling day to day that many of us probably couldn't take. So thanks for sharing that. My last question is around a creed or motto, a word of wisdom, whether it's from Shakespeare, whether it's from music. You mentioned the masterclass and Jacek Perlman. Anything you can leave us with in terms of words to live by?
Well, there's this 70s disco song that I listen to probably way too much. Actually, it's never too much, but it's a song called Attitude, Belief, and Determination by Martin L. Dumas Jr. Maybe I'll see if I can play a little snippet right now because it's so good. Whenever I need to motivate myself again, this is what I play, because those are sort of the three pillars I kind of live by. You have to have the right attitude, you have to believe in yourself, and you have to be determined if you're going to achieve anything. I mean, I don't know. I can't predict the future on what my life is going to look like, right? I didn't know I was going to end up in the finance world at all. I don't know whether I'm going to, what movies I'm going to book or what one of my records will actually hit. I don't know, but I still maintain these three things, these three principles for me about, well, firstly, myself and how to live my life, and all the rest will fall into place.
Attitude, belief, and determination are the elements that control life's situation. Positive attitude, belief, and determination are the things that make success a realization. Just keep following.
So, Julia, thank you for the insights and thank you for the music, quite literally. Not only here, but in this entire series, we've been delighted to mix things up by featuring 5 of your songs. Thank you for the warmth and just vivacious personality that you bring to our industry. It's been great to capture it here and to share your story of resilience.
Thank you so much, Ethan.
I'm Ethan Devitt. Thank you for listening to the 50 Faces podcast. If you liked what you heard and would like to tune in to hear more inspiring investors and their personal journeys, please subscribe on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts.
What did I do? What did I do?
This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be construed as investment advice, and all views are personal and should not be attributed to the organizations and affiliations of the host or any guest.